just give, for most of the questions, all candidates will have about 1 minute to answer that question. And I will be helpful, candidates, this is more for you all than the audience, but I'll start a timer in 1 minute, and then I'll give you a helpful reminder when you have 30 seconds left, and then when you have 10 seconds left. So it would behoove you, talk to your audience, but every now and then glance over at me, right? And then after 10 seconds goes by, after that 10-second reminder, you will hear something like. Something like that. I'll get the mic worked out. There'll be some sort of beep, and I'll give you a couple seconds after that. And in the interest of time, just so we can hear all voices and as many voices as possible, I apologize in advance. I will interrupt you if you're past time. So just be mindful of that. And then after we get through as many questions as we can get through, we'll have final statements for our candidates at the end of the evening, and then some final wrap up for me. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have about 20 minutes in this room to mill around and further meet the candidates. That is our process. My job, as I mentioned, is to hold this space and to uphold a nice process for us tonight. So that really means two things. I am the timekeeper, as you just mentioned, as you just saw. And number two, I pledge to maintain a respectful and connecting environment here. I don't see any issues with that, with this amazing group of folks in front of me, but I do reserve the right to pivot a conversation if I think it's not being respectful or connecting in this environment. That's my job. Two final reminders that I have for you all. Oh, actually, before I get to my final reminders, we have 2 microphones that will share across 11 of us here. So we'll just pass one microphone maybe from Paula to that side of the table, and one microphone from Mark to this side of the table. And after we start those microphones for intros, we can just keep them on. Please hold the microphone closer than you think to your mouth. That's gonna help us. 2 final reminders before we dive in. Kim, how are we doing on live stream? Cool. 2 final things. Intentionally, this event is not called the candidate debate. This is not a debate. This is the candidate forum. Debates have things like rebuttals and back and forth commentary. Tonight is not about debating the others sitting next to you. Tonight is a forum for all Lions to just learn more about you all. And finally, my final reminder for you all is have fun. Take care of yourself. Drink water. Take sips of water. You need to refill water. Just feel free to get up and go to the back of the room and refill water, or just raise your hand. Either Susan and I will come over and see what you need. But take care of yourselves. Smile a lot. Have fun tonight. And with that, my friends, enough of my voice. You'll hear my voice for a couple of questions, but mostly through the rest of the night, you will hear these candidate voices. We're going to dive into introductions. We've asked our candidates to prepare an introduction to themselves, to also include one thing that you love most about Lions and one example of how you have already helped the Lions community and its residents. And we'll go in order of alphabetized by first name. So Amy Schwartz, I will turn it over to you. And you have 1.5 minutes.
All right. Good evening, everyone. You do want to hold it closer than you think. Amy Schwartz here. Thank you all for being here. It's really important to participate in democracy. So thank you. I lived in Lyons for nearly 20 years. I bring a career focused on creating stakeholder engagement and coalitions and public-private partnerships to solve really challenging development, and new school development, mixed income neighborhood communities. I've served on a number of nonprofit boards. I co-founded a charter high school, 400 students in Commerce City. And I've served on the Lions Planning and Community Development Commission for the past 2.5 years. I've chaired it the past year. So I bring all of that collective kind of lived experience to thoughtful, steady leadership on the Board of Trustees if elected. One of my favorite things about Lions is the dog park. Next to my son, my furry son Bodhi is the love of my life, and we have such a great community at the dog park. And one thing I did to help Lions, as we all did, pitched in after the flood. I had experience starting early childhood programs, and so I co-founded Lions Valley Preschool with 2 other parents.
And in the interest of time, we will applaud like in our hearts for our candidates, but not out loud for all of our candidates. Yeah, please, Doug.
Good evening. I'm Douglas Matthews. As a 25-year resident of Lyons, we really feel blessed to live here, which is why we chose to plant our roots here and raise our children here. I just love the idea that we have endless recreational opportunities out our front door. We can walk to town to get a haircut or a dentist appointment. That's really special. To be able to imbibe in the lively food scene and the art scene and the musics and the festivals really makes this a special place, not only to live, but to have such a fine community. Over the last 30 years, I've been fortunate enough to have an opportunity to work for some very large international companies. Spent about 20 years traveling internationally, developing organizations, bringing people together, solving problems. I've also worked on the nonprofit front, and I've worked with a lot of small family businesses, which is what I do today, to help them really realize the potential of their business, stabilize their business and grow. So that gives me a real sense of where we need to be with our business community. Having served on the IGA task force, the land use task force recently, I really have a better understanding of the board of director or the board of trustees and how it works and how I can best serve that group. So I look forward to that. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Greg Wall. I've been here 14 years, been to Lyons, about a year after I retired. The main reason I moved here,
A little bit louder.
because all our family is here. Zach, hear me now?
Perfect, Jack.
Okay. Our family is in Longmont, Boulder, and my daughter and her family are right here in Lyons. Lyons, like every town that I grew up there, it's a small town. And it was impressed upon me very early in the small towns that it's all about participation. I've been on the ecology board, I've been on the Parks and Rec Commission, the Dark Bot Committee, St. Croix Creek Coalition, the Lions Volunteers after the flood. And finally, somehow I decided to jump into this trustee position. Going for my third term, I think I'm finally getting the hang of it. The thing I want to will only say is that it has been impressed upon me that we can all have a role in this town. We can all affect the outcomes of this town. Nick Angelo, even before I was a trustee, I used to go over and sit in the sun with Nick or go into his private shop between the bookshelves, and he'd sit there and he'd offer me advice. And the one thing that always stuck with me was, Nick said to me once, he said, Lowell, and he always called me Lowell, he never called me Greg. Always remember, the people are your boss. So if I'm elected, I'll pledge for this interview, listen to all your concerns, because after all, you are our boss, I'm just working for you.
Thanks, Jen.
Hi, friends and neighbors and the country people. I'm Jen Wingard. I know a lot of you. I've been here over 22 years. I live by the high school. Many of my neighbors over here I see. I grew up in Estes Park as a Park Service brat, and then I got scholarshiped to Miami to become Jacqueline Cousteau. That didn't work out, so I came home, finished at CU Denver in biology and chemistry, and became an environmental scientist. So my early career, which was 30 years long, and then retired, I worked in the school districts all over Denver, Bethco, Loveland, and worked to pull chemicals out of schools and to teach a bunch of middle-aged people a lot of rules and regulations as a 20-year-old. So I had to learn how to communicate well with people. It was a great career. I mostly worked in pharmaceuticals, worked at Department of Energy sites. I've done a ton of wastewater, pre-treatment, air, worked a lot even on the CMEX stuff in the olden days. We were one of the top polluters at my pharmaceutical place in Boulder for many, many years. So we worked to reduce emissions constantly. What have I done for Lyons recently? My favorite, saddest things, but what really brought this community together, unfortunately, was the flood. I spent a lot of time down in the confluence, washing off my friends and neighbors' LPs, trying to salvage music and photographs, trying to dig rocks and ditches and save people's houses. But I'm here and I would like to move on and do this next. So thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Julie?
Hi, I'm Julie Jacobs. I moved to Lyons with my husband Sean about 9 years ago. We moved from Boulder, via Charleston, South Carolina. We love Lyons for the music and the vibe. We used to come here all the time when we lived in Boulder, and so we decided to live here. Within about 3 months of moving here, I started helping. I joined the board of LCF. I immediately left after 3 years of that, went to Housing and Human Services Commission. I served on the IGA task force, and now I serve on KCBC. And I hope to continue to serve as a board, as a trustee. But even if I don't, I'm here to help. I believe very deeply in service. I believe very deeply in giving back to the community. I don't think you look for what the community can do for you. I think you look for what you can do to contribute. Since I got here. I'm a psychologist. I'm a veteran. I'm an attorney. I practice as a psychologist. I joined the Air Force right after 9/11 to help people who were going to be hurt men. I went to CU Law and the post 9/11 GI Bill. Oldest member of the class of 2014 is CU Law. And now I run my own business out of my home. I work with mental health providers and help them run their practices in an ethical and risk managed way. So my jam is ethics and risk management. Clients, helping people do the right thing. And I'm just really looking forward to being able to continue to serve, and I'm really excited about being a part of this community. So thanks for this.
Lee, you're up next.
Thank you. Thank you everyone for coming, or for those of you out in TV land, thank you for streaming. Paul mentioned that this isn't a debate, we're not here to debate one another. I think of it as a team building exercise. So you've got 11 people up here, and many of us will operate as a team on the board of trustees. I'm Lee Williams, I'd like to be a part of that team. We've got a couple people who will be a part of that board as prospectively mayors. Many of us will find other ways to pitch in. So you've got lots of competent, qualified, dedicated people. Whatever you decide about how to build a mix among those people, we'll honor it. My personal belief is that we have lawyers and therapists and teachers and environmentalists and business people. A mix of those, I think, would serve the town very well. I'd like to be a part of that mix. I came to Lyons 9 years ago, one of the best choices I've made in my life. I came because it felt like a very personal place compared to where I had lived before. It turned out it also was not just personal, but it has its own personality. And I was a little worried that with an influx of people like me, we might change that personality too dramatically. We might have too many people coming, or we might make some changes here that none of us really wanted. So much of what I've tried to do is to keep those changes to a minimum and to contribute as a firefighter, as an affordable housing builder, as a member of the board, in anything that I do to preserving Lyons' personality. And I would love to continue to do that. Thank you.
Mariah, you're up next.
Good evening. My name is Mariah McCreary, and I moved here 4 years ago from Tennessee. I am a small business owner. I run the Lyons Farmers Market, starting that up this year in Sandstone Park. And I work for Simply Bee Conservation as their outreach coordinator. So I work at the intersection of food, ecology, art, and civic life. My work focuses on strengthening the root systems beneath the community's public presence, aligning strategy, clarifying purpose, and designing engagement structures that allow communities to thrive. One of my favorite things to do in Lyons is cold plunging in the river. While it's a great resource all year round, I just love it when it's cold. My tagline is foster community interdependence. It recognizes that this town is an ecosystem where infrastructure, housing, business, water, art, and public life are interconnected. I'm running because I believe Lyons can model what a resilient small town looks like. Fiscally responsible, environmentally intelligent, economically vibrant, and deeply engaged across all generations.
Thank you, Mariah. Mark, you're up next.
I'm Mark Browning. I've been here 14 plus years. In that time, I've been on the library board, planning commission, town board, on and off. And the thing I like most about Lyons, the thing I love most about Lyons is the people. That's what I've enjoyed most about being here. That's why I served on all those things. It's to make this a great place for people to live. What have I done to contribute to the community the most? probably the 4, 5, 6 years after the flood. Mucking out houses, crawling in crawl spaces, ripping out drywall. Yeah, the boards and stuff are fun in some ways to serve on, it's kind of sometimes more of a duty. But, in terms of getting things accomplished, doing all the flood cleanup with Team Rubicon and Lions volunteers, I gotta say, that's the thing I think I've contributed the most on. And as I said, the thing I like most about Lions is the people. And that's gonna be my philosophy. If I'm elected mayor, I'm gonna listen to the people and I'm gonna serve the people.
Thank you, Mark. Mike Carafin.
Hi, everyone, I'm Mike Schweiger. I arrived in Lyons in September of 2017 and really was immediately welcomed with open arms. During my first month in town, I actually stayed at the Stiva Inn, for those who remember it. And I enjoyed many nights with hanging out with the locals, Sonny Smith, and morning coffees with the locals at the Barking Dog. And everyone I met initially made me feel at home. And actually, at my first Town of Lyons meeting, I had the opportunity to meet Miss Laverne Johnson, who came up to me and said, "Who are you?" And really from those early interactions with the locals, it became really clear to me that Lyons is a special community and I want to call it home for me and my family. I really do care about the long-term financial health, affordability, and keeping the character of our town. I have more than 25 years of accounting experience, including over 15 years as a chief financial officer. So I would like to bring proven experience in budgeting, financial oversight, and strategic planning. And I'm running for the board to bring my professional experience with a collaborative style and commitment to serving our community. I also enjoy Excel spreadsheets, doing what-if assumptions, looking at revenue, expense, and funding use over the next 3 to 5 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Paula.
So I'm Paula Stone Williams. I've been here since 2007. You know, nobody wakes up when they're 12 years of age and says, I know what I want to do when I grow up. I want to be a mayor. So why do I want to be a mayor? In the last 4 years, serving on the town board, the last 2 years as mayor pro tem, this past summer as acting mayor, it has been a great joy to work with Holly, our mayor, and our board, which includes many of these people and our staff, in accomplishing some really important things. And I want to continue to accomplish those good things. I know what makes for a good board. Over 4 decades, I have chaired over 20 different boards around the country, from nonprofits to a television network. A board's responsibility is to figure out what the big rocks are. It's not a board's responsibility to move those rocks. It is the responsibility of the staff to figure out how to move those rocks and actually move them. We have an excellent staff here in Lyons who have every ability to move those rocks. We're all going to agree on exactly what the issues are. It's going to be infrastructure. It's going to be stormwater runoff. It's going to be affordable housing and economic stability. Everybody's going to agree on that. What I'm going to do is focus on civility, trust, collaboration, and good governance. Thank you.
Thanks, Paula. Tanya?
Good evening, everybody. Some of you may know me as Tanya from Canada, and some of you, including little Sloan over there, know me as Madame Dati. The Canadian part is easy to guess. I was born and raised there, received my Ontario teacher certificate, and I've been able to teach in Canada, France, and the US. The French connection is my husband back there, Gabriel, who I met in 1990 on a Rotary Youth Exchange. We were married there in 1997. We immigrated with our 3 young children to the US in 2011, and luckily for us, we arrived in Lyons in 2012. I was so thrilled to find a small town with so much character, such a great main street, such great schools. It really felt like community instantly. All you had to do was go down to Sandstone Park for the community concert on a Wednesday night at the time. My nonprofit experience here in town ranges from the PTO at the Lyons Elementary School to the LEAF organization to LCF. You know, once I was naturalized as a citizen, in 2021, I actually registered to vote and was seated in 2022. I've been serving ever since on various commissions. I got the time up, so I don't know how long ago. Economic Vitality Commission, Housing and Human Services Commission, Student Advisory Commission, and the Arts and Humanities Commission, just to name a few. Oh, I still got 10 seconds. Okay, great, yeah. And I was really honored to lead the organization of the 10th anniversary of the fund.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you for being here.
And thanks for all those opening statements. We're gonna dive in. We have three initial, just general questions, and then we'll get to the specific questions that came and were synthesized, came from the audience and residents and were synthesized by the student council. But three general questions. How this will work, I'll ask a question, and then I will choose a name from the roll, and that person will go first. And then I will choose whether after that person we go left or right. So we'll randomly start somewhere along the line, and then we'll go left or right, and we'll shake it up that way. We'll see how it goes. We're making this up as we go. Not really. Answering first, our first question here will be Lee Williams. And question for Lee and everyone, and remember, as you've been instructed, for all our questions tonight, feel free to answer or feel free to pass, right? If Lee said the same thing you were gonna say, then we don't need to hear it again. You can just say, thanks, Lee, I'm with you, right? Or whatnot. So you can always pass, you can always use less than your allotted time as well. For most of the questions, including this first question, you'll have 1 minute. 1 minute for this question, and again, starting with Lee, so if you can have that microphone ready, Lee. The first question. How would you handle making a decision that affects the entire community if only a vocal minority of the residents provide their input and opinion?
Jim says I should stand up. So that sounds like the way that we do everything here, right? Everyone steps in. Right, everyone steps in when there's something that they either hear about, that they have some passion about, or maybe it directly affects them, or maybe it directly affects somebody that they care about, or maybe they have some extra expertise. So I don't see our roles ever as making decisions without that input. That vocal input is great. I also don't see our roles as only echoing that input. We have to go find out what others think. We have to take our own experience. I've worked for big companies and small in a bunch of different capacities. I bring something to it myself. And then our job ultimately is to balance all of those. To find people who have some expertise, to find people who have some passion, to dig into our own skills, to collaborate with our other team members and figure out what they think. I kind of annoy the current mayor sometimes, because when it's my turn in the board of trustees to answer a question, sometimes I say, oh, wait, I want to go last. I want to hear what other people think. That's the way that I would almost always do.
Thanks, and for this question, we'll go left. So Jen, you're up next, and then after Julie, Amy will be after Julie.
Hi, Jenny Gunn. I love annoying the mayor. But all try to strive for that, right? My recent example of trying to deal with contentious things was on the IGA task force last summer. So we had a very different eclectic group of individuals that didn't necessarily work very well together originally either. And we were trying to represent all of you in all the neighborhoods. And we also had a lot of input from people that don't get to vote in Lyons, all of these almost annexed areas all around us. Business owners that own businesses that can't vote in Lyons. So we had a lot of people and we were getting information sometimes in not very smooth means. So we did spend time. I know we have some other members here that were on that team. I don't see some of the others here in the audience, but we had to find different ways to go out and get the information, and a lot of that was on foot. So many of you probably saw us in your neighborhoods going to ask. Facebook is not the best way to get information, just saying. But you should still annoy them.
I pretty much echo what these two have to say. I will just make my own little piece here and say that my high engagement in this town is what allows me to get to know more and more residents every day that I live here. I got to know a lot of your friendly faces from behind the counter at Moxie, and that gave me a lot of insight into each and every single person's individuality and opinions and preferences. And without Moxie, since I'm no longer there, hope to see all of you at the farmers market around town. And I'll just learn as I go along.
You know, there's an old saying that the squeaky wheel gets the grease, right? But you have to look behind the noise to see what the motives are. If we're hearing from a vocal minority on an issue that affects the entire town, we have to give consideration to their point of view. But at the same time, we also have to remember what the greater good for the town is. I'm sure there have been decisions in the terms, in my past terms, that disappointed some people. But I'm confident that the decisions we made are for the greater good of all. But at least we heard their point of view. Oh, and by the way, if the majority is silent, then they need to come forward. I would try to solicit their opinion on it.
So I love this question so much. This is literally the reason I run. In my work on the IGA task force with Housing and Human Services Committee and the PCPC, I hear from people, I hear from a lot of the same people. A lot of the same people show up with the same interests. And my concern is that it is a vocal minority and absolutely needs to be heard and considered. But we miss out on hearing from the people that are really affected by our decisions. And I commit absolutely to listening to learn and to making our job to reach out to the business owners that we don't talk to the working class people and the regular folks in town who might not respond to surveys. When we rely on surveys that 120 people respond to, and we say that's what the citizens want, we presume we presume random sampling. I haven't been in statistics for a long time, but these are not random samples. These are self-selected samples. And we're hearing a lot of important information, but there's so much more that needs to be heard. And I will be out there talking to the people who don't get talked to.
Thank you, Joey. Before I turn it over to you, Amy, I recognize that we all just got alert that something's happening with the fire. Recognize the audience, if you all get a phone call that's coming in or need to take a file break, anything like that, we're gonna be here for a little while, so take care of your own needs. And just feel free to step out quietly if you need to have a phone call or anything like that. Amy?
Thank you. Yeah, so in this question, I mean, I would always want to listen and seek to understand all points of view.
We're closer.
I think we also have a comprehensive plan that's done every 10 years. That's a guide to what our community needs. We also have a pretty robust governance structure of 11 commissions and advisory boards that all have their specialties. So that's, you know, if it's an issue about the arts, what does the arts commission think about this? And I think when weighing a high stakes decision, you always have to consider the costs and benefits to the most residents in town and the long-term implications of that decision.
So I echo what Amy had just stated, so I'll just add a couple of different things. I think it's really important for us to listen, to understand, to challenge any assumptions, challenge what you're hearing. I think it's also important to over communicate, because that also always leads to getting everyone's input. And then ultimately taking advantage of the various committees that are in place to try to make the best possible decision, but make it a collaborative and inclusive process in this issue.
I love those words, Mike, collaborative and inclusive. And here's a copy of the comprehensive plan right here, Amy. I have that here as a reminder of the work this community spent 2 years putting together as a collaborative process. I think almost 400 people contributed to this. And this is a really great example of how we can come together to decide on what our goals are as a community. You know, in the last 4 years, I've served on the board of trustees. I've seen and heard from vocal minorities, and we have held town halls and we have sent out community surveys. But luckily for me, I'm a talker, Julie. I'm very sociable. And what I love about Lions is I can ride my golf cart everywhere. And I love to get out and talk to people. And I think hearing everybody's story, getting a sample, a cross reference of the entire community from every neighborhood, getting out there, talking to your neighbors, but also your friends' neighbors. I think that's what matters. You need to just read all your sources, talk to as many people as possible, and try and come up with your own opinion of what this community needs, as well as listen to those surveys.
One of the great things that's about the setup of our governmental system here in Lyons is it's forced to be a team sport. This isn't really driven by any one person, any one opinion, that everybody has to find that compromise and find that information. I think we have a demonstrated, I've seen from virtually everybody that's up here today, an ability to engage in the community and to pull feedback and pull voices in and pull that information in. And then it's really about just applying reason, judgment, and good governance to making decisions that will impact in a positive way the most people we can. With the understanding that there are some decisions that some people will like and some people won't, and that's the nature of the business. But as long as we're using good judgment and sticking together with it, that's how we'll succeed.
I would answer this question with a question. How would you know that the people that have spoken up, come to town hall, circulated petitions, been active on social media, any way you can express your opinions in lines, how do you know they're a minority? If a group of 50 people shows up in Pat's Town Hall and presents you with a petition signed by 250 people from all over town, should you assume they're a minority? I think if the town and the town board in particular, as elected officials, are doing their jobs correctly, they'll be in a good position to know whether a particular point of view, whether expressed by 3 people or 30 people, is minority or majority view. Sometimes it's tough to tell. We had a big hotel meeting with packed to the rafters of people on both sides, and it was close. And in that case, and in all cases really, the final decision is what's in the best interest of the town as a whole. That's the guiding principle.
Yeah, what he said. A therapist, as a therapist, I have no answers. My client has the answers, but we're not gonna get to those answers if I'm not asking the right questions. So for me, it's keeping your ear to the ground to find out what the questions are that our residents are asking.
Thank you all. Second general question, these first 2 questions come from our Redstone review. The second question from the review, and the first person to start this question will be Greg. We'll start with you, Greg, and we'll go to your right after that, for this one. Second question here, what is your governing style? Do you prefer to be focused on details or on the big picture? 1 minute.
I'm definitely a big picture guy. I know the details are important, and you get into the details eventually when you start to unearth all the facts and figures behind what the big picture is, but I tend to take a very simplistic view of things. Unfortunately, sometimes that doesn't work, but in the majority of times I find that it does. I'm definitely, I look at the big overall picture and judge its benefit to the town and to the residents.
I am also a big picture gal. I love to look at a system and see what happens when you poke this side or pull this thread and how that affects the entire system. And so with that, I love to see how we can approach big picture solutions in a very creative and integrated way.
Yeah, it's true. I'm also a big picture person, but I'm also collaborative and I'm a scientist, so details matter, which is another reason why we have all these boards and commissions. We cannot make good decisions without the right listening to all of those types of details. And you have a lot of examples here, you know, we talk about funding some of these infrastructure projects, for instance, a lot of details. Pushing back at regulators, whoever that is, to get what we need faster and cheaper. Details do matter, but yes, we need to get more done faster with the smart people. That could be many of you. I am wearing Miss Laverne's picture here. She wants us all to volunteer. This is a verb, not a noun tonight. And if you want to join one of these boards or commissions, please come forward or help in any other manner. We have lots of subgroups that also happen trying to get those details.
I think she just said that volunteer is a verb, but I heard that Laverne is a verb. So if the question is, what's my style of governing? First, personal style. I've already said I like to listen first. The people who often bring topics to the board first are staff. And I pay a lot of attention to what staff thinks. I trust them, I rely on them. I think they ultimately will execute in many cases. The next group obviously is a much broader group that can bring in perspectives or expertise. I'll ask, I'll listen to what everybody has to say. My opinion won't be about opinion. It will be me applying my skills to synthesize the opinion to the data that I've gotten. The second part of the question was style of governing. In general terms, my philosophy of government is to do as little as needs to be done. So I don't think we need to be in every issue. I don't think we can afford to be in every issue. So there's going to be a very high bar and a lot of prioritization that'll drive my governing stuff.
So of all the boards I chaired, the hardest was the television network, and we instituted what's known as Carver Policy Governance. In Carver Policy Governance, the board's job is to determine what the ends of the organization are. Like I said before, what the big rocks are. It's the staff's job to determine the means by which we will get to those ends. They're the ones who figure out how to move the rocks and move them. The board's job then is to hold the staff accountable for moving the rocks the board has decided need to be moved. That's how I've functioned for the last many, many decades, and I think how a board functions best.
Big picture or details? Both. I'll give you an example. I work better with examples sometimes than abstract ideas. The comp plan and the housing futures plan gave a big picture of our housing needs in Lyons. We need more rental property. We need more middle housing. We did a housing futures plan to address those. But the details of that, in that housing futures plan, got many, many things wrong. We had a big meeting, packed with citizens, and they were irate about the many things that were wrong in the housing futures plan. And so it became the board's job to get involved and fix some of the incorrect details, which will guide our big picture going forward and what we should do about housing. So big picture, details, it takes both.
I strongly echo what Mark's saying. I really think it is a combination of big picture and details, right? First, as Lee said as well, we should limit the scope of what we're trying to work on and really focus on our priorities. But there are points where details matter. And one of the things that I've really come to appreciate about not only the town itself, but especially when you look at the candidates that are all up here, there's a lot of talent. There's a lot of skill. There's a lot of experience. And I think it's right, and I think it's appropriate to use that experience to help staff when they need it. That's not to say to get in their way, but we have expertise that we can bring to it. That's why there's 7 people serving as opposed to 1. And so we should use the skill set we have to help people along to make the right decision.
Thank you, Doug. You know, I really want to answer this question with the sticker on my town iPad here. WWLD, what would Laverne do? When I am struggling with a question, when I'm trying to keep that 30,000-foot view in mind, I always think back to Laverne. I don't know how many of you had the privilege of knowing her, but I feel like she knew that we're not experts. I don't pretend to be an expert in anything, but I do know how much I care about my community, and I know that we have to make the best decisions for our community moving forward, which is why we need the long-term view. I like to gather evidence, listen to people, listen to experts, not me, and then trust stuff to execute our decisions. So that would be my governing style, but mostly I go back to what would Laverne do, and her portrait sitting there on her throne right behind us as a reminder. She's watching over us.
So as a mechanic, a bean counter, I am detail oriented. And I do want to understand the numbers and the decisions that are gonna have a financial impact on the town. So I like to make those decisions, based on though having clear objectives, having clear goals, such as the Alliance Comprehensive Plan that outlines what those goals and objectives are. But again, getting into the details a little bit to understand the numbers and the financial impact that's gonna have on the town. As far as my governing style, I've said this before, I do believe in collaboration. You know, there's a phenomenal group of individuals here who are extremely intelligent and knowledgeable and care about the town. There's no bad ideas. If you don't know something, you just need to ask, you just need to have an open mind and, listen to those who know best. But again, what's in the best interest of the town?
All right, everyone, so I would say I lean towards big picture for sure, like Mariah, I see the interconnectedness between housing, economic vitality, community building, parks and all those things. And I would say my governing style, I've been trained in policy governance, for 7, going on 8 years. I've been the board chair of the STED school, a charter high school in Commerce City. As a board, we set a strategic plan. We have goals around academic achievement, financial health, and our own professional development and governance. As a board, we hire an executive director. We do performance reviews, hold that leader accountable for implementing the strategic plan.
Louis.
Hi, yeah, I think it's kind of a false dichotomy, big picture and details. I don't think you can look at one without the other. They can't get really be looked at in isolation. As far as governing style or leadership style, I'd say you gotta know the rules, the constraints, the regulations under which you're operating. You gotta know what you don't know, trust the experts, get information from the people who know, don't trust your gut. Always, your gut is information and it's important, but it shouldn't dictate decisions. Build relationships. Use those relationships to navigate the system. So there are ways to be collaborative. You can gather information. Like everyone said, we have an unbelievable group of people here. We've got I would hesitate to try to count all the degrees and levels of education. These people know things. They know how to look at facts. They know how to analyze facts. Trust the experts, build relationships, navigate systems together.
Thanks, everyone. We have one more general question before we get to specifics. This next question, I grew up in Boston. Some of you might remember there was a former Speaker of the House, Tip O'Neill, who said all politics is local politics. That's gonna be the rest of the night, all local questions. So before we go there, we'll step back. And this last general question, first person to answer this one will be Mark. So we'll turn it over to you in 1 sec, Mark. The question is, what is one thing from either Colorado state politics or the national political scene right now that will be informing your work as a trustee locally here in Lyons? 1 minute. Sorry.
That was pretty easy. We could never have recovered from the flood without, I believe it was $76 million of federal grants. We could never have built the affordable housing that we have, although it's not as much as we wanted, without a federal government $4 million flood loan. The federal government pipeline has dried up. Colorado has been redlined. Grant requests are being denied. Funds that have been appropriated by Congress are being withheld. We can't live off the federal government anymore. Should we still try to get grants where they're available? Yes. On the state level, state, as you may have heard, is in a budget crunch. It's facing deficits and it's cutting back things. The state's already taken money out of the Proposition 123 housing funds and redirected it to other purposes. We really have to focus on living within our means because our local means are going to be more and more important and more decisive on what we can do and not do. And that means we've got to prioritize carefully.
We'll go to your left. We'll go to your left.
On January 21st, 2021, it was my very great honor to be one of the speakers for the inaugural prayer service of President Joe Biden. On January 21, 2025, 4 years later to the day, I discovered that the president had signed an executive order saying that I, as a transgender person, do not exist. What a difference 4 years makes. I believe in the dignity of every single human being, in the dignity and voice of every single resident. Decency has always begun at the grassroots, and it will be beginning again, as it has continued to be for the past here.
Thank you, Paula. I echo your commitment to decency. I think that's something all of us do and should share. At the state and national level, honestly, one of my concerns is that there are many people who think of blue states or red states or blue periods or red periods. I never have felt that here in Lyons and don't ever want to. I think we all can figure out the answers to the problems that we have, and we can do it together without having to characterize ourselves one way or another. These are not those kinds of issues. At the state level, I think, as Mark said, there are some things that we could adopt. We could adopt the kind of discipline that has been forced on the state. It hasn't been forced on us yet. We have a little bit of time until we have some big bills like wastewater treatment plant coming our way. But if we exhibit the kind of discipline that has been forced on others a little ahead of time, I think we'll be that much better off.
Yes, all of that. This is really big for us, this lack of decency, huge in every way, and I really commend that us in Lions, we haven't really fallen into that, there's a few Facebook exceptions. But, that's so important, and then the funding piece is huge. So I was doing a little research before we got together today, and, you know, even Colorado knowing that we're tightening the belt with 123, there are other things we can do. The spilled authority with tax exempt bonds, there's loans and there's other partnerships that we can tap in. I'm on the Historic Preservation Commission also, and we have some amazing grant writers that still are able to get us some grant money. Not very big ones. We're gonna need a lot bigger for the big infrastructure projects. But there are other programs that we can look at, other districts we could learn from. And that's, you know, we're not experts, but we will become experts. Belt tightening is going to prevent us from doing everything perfectly, but we won't let the perfect get in the way of the damn good.
Yes to all of this, and I just wanna say it's exactly what got me motivated to step into running for this year. Fully believing in this community and believing that grassroots, motivation is the answer. And knowing that we could really improve our communications. And so I just know that there's a lot of people in town who have a lot to say and a lot they wanna get involved in. And I foresee us making more creative and clear pathways for more individuals to get involved. So that we can see this really start to thrive from a grassroots level up instead of having to constantly rely from a top-down solution.
Seems like the current administration has it in for Colorado. The latest example that we heard of was the Northern Hills Bikeway, which is gonna go from Lyons all the way to North Boulder. Department of Transportation, I forget, said they cut it. That's not happening. It may happen 3 years down the line with the new administration, but right now it's not happening. But the hope that we have, and we have good people like our representative Joan Goose. We looked the other night at the Board of Trustees meeting, a wish list of projects for which they might go to bat for us for federal funding. Number one, of course, is the wastewater treatment plant. So we're hoping that Representative Goose can show his gravitas and get us some money out of that.
So the one thing from national politics that will inform my work here, my heart breaks when I see the divisiveness and the false us and them that has been created. I'm a raging liberal who joined the Air Force. Okay, there is no us and them, there's an us. But people are convincing us that we have to be pitted against each other. They're misinforming us. They're using our emotions to create divisions. We've been lucky that that hasn't happened much in Lions, but we are fooling ourselves if we say it hasn't happened at all in Lions. And if we can't respect the dignity of every single person in this town, regardless of race or gender identity or political affiliation or any of that, then we are losing what makes a small town important. And so I'm not gonna pretend that I don't scream and yell about what I think is wrong, what's going on, but I also will listen to everybody. There is no us and them. It is us.
Okay.
So I spent a lot of time, I spent 3 years studying school finance policy in the state of Colorado, and we have a lot of tax limiting policies that create an environment where we have to choose between more funding for public education, more funding for roads, more funding for infrastructure, because We are the only state in the nation where any tax increase at the local level, state level, has to go to the voters. Not one state has copied the taxpayer bill of rights in all of this time. And so I worry about all of the things we have to go to voters and pit one issue against the other. And I don't have a perfect answer to that, but it's something I think about. And I know we can solve big problems. We've done it before. Thank you.
I kind of echo everyone's sentiment here that we can't rely on the federal or state government to help funding some of these future projects. I do believe that it's very important to run your finances based on the numbers. Remain within a budget so you don't run into a deficit. That comes with planning and forecasting, just taking the best assumptions to come out with what that end result is. I do think that, we still need to try to identify opportunities with tax exempt loans, with grant opportunities, with funding. I know that those are drying up, but, congratulations to the town staff who got $40,000 in, grant money for wildfire mitigation. So there's still dollars out there. It's just we need to, continue to work hard on identifying where those opportunities are and, make it happen.
Thank you, Mike. We've all been watching the national scene, and it's really disheartening. And I think what gives me faith in government is how I've seen municipal government work. We really can make a difference right here at this level. And if we can't prove that human beings can be decent and civil and trust each other and collaborate right here in Lyons, Colorado, then I don't know where it's going to happen. So we're lucky. We're so privileged. We live in such a great community with so many fantastic people, and we all get these principles. I think we all share these values, and I think we can't let go of that. And that is the dichotomy for me between the national political scene and the local political scene. All of that.
And I'll wrap it up without trying to repeat everything, because the comments have been spot on. But I think in my opinion, the biggest threat to us as a society is normalizing the divisiveness. And it's become so easy for people to think, oh, he feels this way or that way, or believes this or that. When the fact is that the challenges and the tasks that the board faces every day, every time they meet, there's not a single issue that ever comes up that I've seen that is black and white, one way or the other, a yes or no. It's all shades of gray. And I think if we don't get away from this divisiveness and trying to presume people feel one way or the other and continue, we need to continue to work on these shades of gray. How do we find that compromise and how do we move the ball forward?
Thank you all. We're gonna move on to specific questions, and like I said, I have a stack of cards. Thank you, residents, for submitting your questions. Let me just pull back the curtain and be transparent here. All of the questions were collected from this Student Advisory Council, and they consolidated, and many questions you can imagine were similar to each other. So I have about 7 or 8 questions, and we'll just see how many we get through. And the first question here, the first person to answer will be Tanya. We'll start with Tanya, and we will head to the left this time. Tanya, this is a question I know. I was meeting with the Student Advisory Council right before this, and they've been together for 2 months now. And this is their priority project that they're working on. So it became their priority question. And it's a question around the creative arts in Lyons, which we know is so important. 2-part question here. Would you support an area for artistic graffiti in Lyons to combat illegal vandalism in other parts of the town? And what other ideas do you have on supporting positive creative arts?
Thank you for that question, Paul. I happen to be the liaison to the Student Advisory Commission. So I was actually able to be there for the discussion around graffiti. And actually it was really enlightening and really educational for the students to hear from our sheriff's department directly. We're able to speak to the history of graffiti we have had in our town. And lately it's been mostly concentrated underneath the McConnell Bridge. And I think the students were really surprised and a little disheartened, but immediately they started looking for solutions. And I love that about our youth. I love that, they're very creative. And so they came up with this idea, and I thought of this idea before myself, actually, was having a dedicated wall. We don't really know where that might go. We don't know if it'd be near the skate park or where, would it be near that bridge? Would it be near the school? I don't know. We'd have to consult with the community on that and get feedback. But I do love the idea of having a dedicated graffiti space. I've seen it in Europe, in different major cities where they take entire cement walls and they will fill them with graffiti. So I think it's worth investigating.
Well, heck, yeah.
I believe that I would agree with it as well. I have no idea how it would be implemented or managed. But I certainly would like to see it, a graffiti wall of some sort tried. I'm very excited about the new, creative district being formed and getting more energy and fresh energy. And I look forward to being able to participate and support that and, watch it grow and evolve.
I think the idea of a graffiti wall is a creative idea, worth trying. I don't know if any of you have had the pleasure to go to Prague, Czechoslovakia, and see the Lenin Wall. That's Lenin as in John, not in Vladimir. It's been an institution for years. It's covered with artwork that draws tourists while we went there. Something like that is an experiment to see if offering something like that will decrease graffiti in the rest of the town. Certainly worth trying. And I would echo the Arts District. The LAHC has done a great job over the years in promoting arts here. We've gradually increased the funding. We have limits in funding in that area like others. That's being transitioned to the new creative district. The town has had a lot of, a big role in creating. Those of you who were here last night met the new director of that creative district. I think it's going to be great. So we should continue to support that and make sure that it's adequately funded and that the transition from the LAHC to the creative district works well.
Graffiti wall is a great idea. It will not stop graffiti. Graffiti happens because people are angry and they're trying to show an identity. The way we deal with that is to meet the needs of our young people. LEAF has a new program where they're able to provide up to 8 sessions for anyone of therapy. I think that is a wonderful direction to go. That's how we solve that problem. As it comes to the arts, oh, the arts are in the DNA of this town, and I love it. I saw people stopping on the side of the road, which was not a good thing, to go and have their pictures taken by the one of the statues that was there, the moose. And it's like, yeah, that's Lions.
On graffiti, there are things that I love about graffiti. I love the expressiveness. I love the creativity. I love even the rebellion, which, might be close to one of those gray shades of gray that Doug talked about. On the other side of that, on the other side of the bright line, there's destruction. And I don't like that. So if there's a way that with a graffiti wall or any other way, we can give people a voice and a place and an outlet and a chance to say something that we ought to be hearing, I'm all for it. On the larger issue of creativity, one of the things that I think we need to do a better job of is finding centers of gravity for different things that happen here. One is creativity. We have the new creative district. One is the work that the town government actually does. One is the community interests of all of the business people. And sometimes it's hard even to get those centers. It's harder than that to make sure that they are naturally and rationally connected. And I think that's largely the job of the board.
Well, I was raised by artists and musicians, both sides. Yes, expressing yourself through graffiti, I've grown up with it, I love it. When I was in New Orleans for Anne Rice's funeral on November 1st, New Orleans has a setup at one of their art alleys where they put big posters and they provide the paint and you give a donation and you get to go to town. And there's usually professional graffiti people that can help coach you on certain things. It was awesome. I mean, it was a little fumey, but it was awesome. So I'm totally in support of that. I'm also really in support of the new creative district and getting more different ideas from all of you about what that looks like. I would love to see the senior class of Lyons High School, for instance, put together a sculpture that we put in town somewhere. I would like to see more local artists being represented with sculptures. And maybe people are just afraid and they don't know the process, but I would love to see more being done for that because it is very cool.
So on this issue, I strongly agree with where Paula stands, that graffiti wall is an amazing idea, and it is not going to stop graffiti because of its roots in the disgruntled voice. And so with that, especially targeting our youth, I mean, I'd love to hear more from them, like, where are they tonight? And so with that, I really hope that we can focus on a pipeline to hear their voices. And something that I heard recently in the LAHC meeting was an artist who is not youth, but is an up and coming artist and really wanted support in finding a way into the art community through a mentorship program or what have you. And something like that would be amazing to see through the LCD, and that could support both young emerging artists and older emerging artists.
I'm of two thoughts on graffiti. You know, when you sit at the railroad crossing in Longmont and you watch all those railroad cars come by with, I think it's, quite frankly, it's beautiful art, to be honest with you. I wonder how they do it, to be honest with you. But unfortunately, the stuff we're seeing here in town is sort of nasty, sophomoric stuff. That's always seems to be done in the forbidden places. I would put a challenge forward to the Lions Creative District to consider what you just described, Jen, as a wall where the real true artists could come in and display their graffiti. I don't think we're ever gonna solve the problem of junior high kids surreptitiously spray painting nasty stuff inside of buildings. But I think we could probably find a solution for the true graffiti artists.
So many good answers already. Yes, graffiti wall is a cool idea. Graffiti wall ad art, right? Controlling it, having some idea. It's another creative outlet. It's what Lions is all about. Paula, you hit it on the head. The psychologist in me went, oh. Yes, graffiti is acting out. We need to support youth. We need to hear from youth. We have someone right here who'd be on our board of trustees who would be a voice for youth. Wouldn't that be amazing? In terms of how to support arts, I think we should support artists. And the way we support artists is we make sure they can live in town. And we make it a goal of the town to ensure that there is workforce housing and that there's housing that people can afford to create all of this beautiful stuff for us to have the privilege to enjoy.
I too am the daughter of artists, and I would say I've probably taken for granted, all of the arts that's been surrounding us here in Lions for all these years. So I would want to deepen my support of that. I'm very excited about the new creative district. Concerned about the fundraising that's gonna need to happen there, but would love to support that. I am very supportive of student voice and student agency and leadership. So I agree with the is this a solution to stop graffiti? I'm not sure, but I'm certainly willing to give students a chance to share their ideas and support them in their leadership.
So, I would want to further understand the challenges, the good, the bad, the pros and cons of doing the graffiti type wall and identifying an area. But I do want to say that I really do think we need to support our local students and encourage all of their various interests that they may have. And if that's within arts, awesome. If that's a summer internship program, working with the town, awesome. So I really support how do we continue to encourage our youth to become the next town leaders. And in reference to the creative district, it sounds really exciting. And how do we take the creative district and try to create art festival events to draw in customers, people that are gonna come to town to support an art festival type event. And then ideally, they're gonna be remaining in town to spend dollars with the local businesses.
Thanks, y'all. Switching gears, with several questions around economic vitality, including thoughts around changing of permits to support entrepreneurial uses. How can we ensure continued economic vitality in our small businesses during the winter months? And I would hold on to those two thoughts, and I'm gonna ask this question that's bit of a specific case study here. As we know, 402 Main Street is being redeveloped right now, and the leaders of that development are actively soliciting ideas for how to round out usage of that space in downtown. So what in general, either for that space or in general, what can the Board of Trustees do to help create the biggest economic or community impact in that space and the rest of the downtown? And to start us off for this question, Doug, we'll have you start. And Doug, we'll go to your right.
Okay. That's a tricky one, not knowing exactly how the building's gonna be built, but obviously it's such a centerpiece when you enter the town and when you enter Main Street, that whatever it is has to be vibrant and important and active. Personally, I'd like to see if there's a way that could be a mixed-use building with some residential on the top as opposed to offices. To me, that seems like it would be a natural solution where you could cover both a nice market price living option and some affordable housing options while letting the revenue from the businesses itself be the real anchor to that building. But that would take more study.
You're right.
Okay. All right, hi. We were literally just talking about 402 Main on Monday night and trying to figure out how we can help them build, basically afford the development fee so they could get their building permit. And so we realized what a cornerstone, literally is the cornerstone of Third and Main. And there will be a general store right there at the corner that you will enter on a diagonal. And maybe there'll be a soda fountain in the general store, and there will be tenants on either side. And I know there have been a lot of investigations and surveys, informal surveys from the owners of this establishment trying to figure out what does Lions need? Because obviously they want to succeed and we want them to succeed. So we're working together. That's a collaborative process. Above is actually a co-working space that is planned, but it's flexible enough in its planning that it could become a restaurant. So I love that they're creative and they're versatile and they're flexible, but we're also working together and being super intentional and super proactive to help them be a success.
So I don't want to repeat, because I think those are two great ideas and it's kind of my same thought that Doug and Tanya had. But you know, it's a very difficult question. How do we how do we identify opportunities where Lions becomes a destination, not just a pass-through? And I'm not sure what that answer is, but working collaboratively with the local businesses, speaking with the wedding venues, the event venues that we have, you know, how do we identify opportunities to support the local business with patrons and individuals stopping here and actually spending some time and spending their dollars here? Maybe one idea is creating some sort of workshop, working with local businesses, the Board of Trustees, and maybe some event companies that have had some success in years past with like Old Man Winter and the Summer Vibes. Maybe they have some opportunity or ideas that we can incorporate to do additional events like a wine weekend.
So I think a couple of thoughts on this one. I think we, some incentives, whatever incentives we can provide as a town. I think there's been, some parking, space, incentives provided to the building. I think as a developer, right, they need to present a financing plan for the facility that's supported by the operations of the businesses that are gonna be there. And that the businesses can afford the debt service on the facility that they're gonna build. So if those two aren't in sync yet, it has to be a little bit of movement on one side or the other. Maybe there are ways to build it's still a beautiful building with a little lower construction cost. I think about the city of Uray. AJ and I went there a couple of years ago. I think the population is half of Lyons and they have hundreds of thousands of visitors every year. And they are way out there. We're only an hour from DIA. We can do this.
All right, well, I think, one thing we need to do to the extent that we can, and while we're still addressing health and safety issues, is get out of the way. We need to create processes that are more streamlined, that don't create more barriers for folks. I mean, 402 Main, so excited about it. As part of PCDC, we got to see renderings, we got to hear the plans. The developers are amazing and willing to go through all of these hoops. Collaborative relationships, existing relationships that we can hopefully convince them to keep doing these great things in town. As far as economic vitality, broken record time. We had these forums for the business leaders last week, and I talked about affordable housing, and I talked about workforce housing, and that applause. But the only applause that was too nice. Okay, the business leaders need employees. They need to retain employees. They need to have, and it doesn't all have to be big A affordable housing. Just regular old housing that someone like I can live in, or that any of our workforce members can live in. That is vital to the economy of this town. That keeps us running through the winter. That keeps us going.
I'll borrow a phrase from the Hippocratic Oath, the oath that doctors take. And part of that oath says, first, do no harm. So I believe that as a board, when we consider any regulations that might affect businesses, we need to consider them very carefully. We don't need to put any more pressure or any more expenses on the business in town. I don't know if all of you are aware, but the folks on whoever is elected here as a trustee at some point is gonna take off their trustee hat. And they're gonna go sit down and they're gonna function as commissioners for the Urban Renewal Authority. There's a large section of the downtown here that's our urban renewal district. As far as 402 Main Street specifically, the URA has pledged $1.7 million. Payable in 20 years or less. That'll come from tax increment financing. There's not enough time tonight to describe to you how this all works. Trust me, it works. But right now, we're underwater. As the assessment of properties go up, so too do the taxes, and you get the difference between what it was and what it is.
So many good ideas. And as excited as I am about affordable housing as well, I don't know that it's the best use of the top space of 402 Main. I don't know how affordable that would necessarily be. And I'm excited to see it as a co-working space, just knowing how many self-employed people there are in Lyons and how many of us and how many of them are searching for places to go that's outside of their home to make a community connection. And of course, we have coffee shops, but so many coffee shops are transitioning to no laptops and wanting more conversation. And so Lyons needs a place where those self-employed people can leave their home, connect with their loved ones and their friends and foster their business. And what can the board do to support? I think that they can showcase these issues in a more public way. I mean, these forums are on the website, but nobody goes there that often. So how can we share what's happening when these developers bring these proposals to the board?
Yes, all very good. We have these holes in town, right? And that breaks it up where people are wandering and trying to spend money in our town. We need to get a handle of that. But we're kind of missing one of the questions that was actually, I think, put in related to this. And that is around changing the permitted uses of some of the downtown. We have an example here from this fellow right here who owns the bike shop space. Doesn't own the shop, but he owns it. Taxes, insurance, wildfire protection, all of these things are gonna cost so much. So can we do more for those folks? Can we put the RBOs back in upstairs on the downtown so that we get people coming here without a hotel and having a place to stay? That would help all of their bottom line also. Those kind of creative things we do need to talk more about. And we do talk about it at PCDC.
In simplest terms, and you've heard both of these already, I think we need to get out of the way with some guardrails, and we need to have coherent branding that brings clientele and brings employees to town. So for 402 Main, these are very responsible developers. They want to respect the character of downtown. They understand Lyons. We were able to give them pretty broad guardrails, and they were happy to stay within them. When we built workforce housing on Evans Street, our first consideration was the people who already lived on that property, making sure they could continue to live there. They could come back after we'd done construction. Our second was to make sure that it fit into the neighborhood. People in government and among staff gave us pretty wide guardrails. We were absolutely happy to live easily within those guardrails. On branding, one of the questions that we had earlier, I responded to by saying, I think we need some coherent strategy for government and business and creatives to talk. I think if we're really good at that, we will end up with a Lions brand that will bring people into 402 Main and everywhere else.
When it comes to 402 Main, I want to listen to Sarah and Bart and Paul and Renee because they know what they're doing. The thing I want to do is listen to all of our business owners because they know what their needs are. And then to do everything we can to streamline the process for them.
Agreed. It's not the place of town government to try to prescribe or dictate uses for particular commercial spaces. That's up to the businesses. But we do need to give them the flexibility to do the things they want to do, like loosening the restrictions on Airbnbs in some underutilized downtown spaces. I hope that that comes to the next board. One thing I'd like to try is, because there's too many vacant spaces in downtown Lyons, as other people have mentioned, there's a program that some other towns do called Vacant to Vibrant. And that is the town provides financial incentives in the form of waiving half the building permit fees and waiving half the use taxes, which are usually on construction materials, for any new business that moves into a vacant space. Could be a business transferring from elsewhere in town, could be a completely new one to town. Give the businesses the incentives to do something, but let them make the decisions on what they actually do.
Thank you all. Just wanted to have you all take a couple of deep breaths. We probably have 3 or 4 more questions and we'll do closing statements. So thanks, everyone. I know it's a long haul for you all. And also I'm just, no pressure, no expectations, but no one has taken me up on passing yet. I'm just saying. Just saying.
Should I go refill my water bottle?
Why don't you hear the question first? Yeah. This next question, we're gonna, we got again a series of questions around environment, the environment, beautiful environment and the nature around Lyons. This is quite a general question. There's a combination of general and specific to this question, but feel free to take this question in different directions around trails, wildfire, obviously top of mind, or other directions. But what specific policy would you endorse to preserve the environment around Lyons and to keep the town unique and nature friendly? And to start us off, we will have Jen, and we'll go to your left, Jen.
Okay, that's a hard one. So my science is my environmental protection does not really pertain to this matter specifically. We have lots of regulations, federal, state, and local. We worked with that for 30 years. Most of it in Boulder County, obviously. But for us, protecting the environment, so we do a lot of this when we were working, and we still are working on annexation process. You know, Boulder County has these VISTA rules. We want to make sure we have this VISTA around us. Hall Ranch, Hill Ranch, protect them from fires. We need to keep that. Some of these animal corridors, we talk about that, and they're on a lot of the boards and commissions, we talk about animal corridors and how we're going to protect the animals when we're designing and doing new things. So I think we need to preserve those things. I don't think that there's gonna be anything really necessarily new that we can do, but we definitely need to re-educate everyone and find some new processes to reach people about those existing rules.
So with this question, I'm really excited to talk about the fact that Lyons is now a certified B city. And with that comes regulations that the town has to, or requirements, sorry, that the town has to hit every year in order to maintain that status. And so there's action right now working on expanding pollinator space throughout the town of Lyons, working closely with the Parks and Wildlife Department in town. And so that is going to be like a really cool way and a new way to get people engaged, because those sorts of spaces can go into municipal space, neighborhood space, potentially at Leaf with the community garden. You know, it's not preservation and it's in and of itself, but it's a way to get the people talking about this pollinator education, this green space education.
So the number one economic driver in this town, I think everybody will agree with me, is this river that flows through town. That's our first order of business, is to protect it from development, both seen and unseen. We know a lot of people do stuff on the slide. But critical to all this is that we fix the wastewater treatment plant. Nobody's gonna come to town to sit in the skink, the wastewater treatment plant on a summer day, or to put their feet and follow water because the system has failed there. So that's the number one environmental priority. Second of all, somebody mentioned habitat here, and I was really disappointed to find out in some of the plans that were put forth in the IGA included development in critical wildlife habitat and critical wildlife corridors in strict defiance of our own comprehensive plan and the county's comprehensive. So protect it, fix the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah, I mean, this is a really tough question, right? We know that Lyons is valued because of how beautiful it is, and so we do need to take every reasonable step we can to protect that balance. We don't want to stymie progress or development, but we also need to make sure that we protect what makes this place amazing. The river, the wastewater treatment plant, I mean, I could not agree more. There's not gonna be anything to protect if that fails on us. So it's not really, I mean, it is an answer to the question, but it's not a specific policy that's gonna protect the environment. It's a specific task that needs to be the top priority in order to preserve what we have.
Really great comments. The only thing I would add is that, I was at a smart growth, summit earlier today, put on by the University of Denver's Rocky Mountain Land Institute. And, you know, there's a whole group of scientists at the Department of Local Affairs that study environmental impacts, water use, you know, all of these things on development and smart growth. And certainly we need to protect what we have. It's one of the number one things why we all love living here. I think I'm very worried about just water use. Like, we're all living a very privileged life right now, trying to get sprinklers on. And I think the snowpack is as low today. It hasn't been this low since like the 1990s. So we're in for it, and a lot to learn in this space, but that's some of the things I'm most worried about.
So as a first timer, trying to do the election here with the board of trustees, I don't know enough to really provide an intelligent answer. So I do know that tackling the wastewater treatment plant is definitely a priority. Obviously, that impacts tourism, environmental issues and whatnot. But Pat, I guess on the question.
Thank you, Mike. Someone's listening.
So I heard you ask the question, how to preserve and how to keep us safe. And honestly, I feel a huge responsibility serving on this board of trustees on keeping our community safe. And as you know, we're all watching, listening, for these wildfires that, pop up every year, 1.5 miles south of town. We have to prepare for that day. And just the other night, we spent a lot of time reading before the meeting, we read a 268-page document called the CWPP, Community Wildfire Protection Plan, if I recall correctly. And there are a lot of recommendations in there to prepare us for evacuation, to prepare us for the hazard ignition zone, which you're gonna hear a lot about in the coming year. You know, we're gonna have to start being really proactive about how we protect our space. We want to enjoy our trails, we want to recreate, we want to be outdoors. We have to be so smart. We just have to take the precautions, the necessary precautions. We just do. We'll do it together.
Sort of building off of that with the wildfire mitigation, I think there's another risk that is often an environmental risk, is often understated or underappreciated, and that's the stormwater runoff risk, especially coming down Steamboat Valley. So in the 2016 stormwater master plan, it really outlined the nature of that risk and the extreme way it's continuing to get worse and worse every year. Not only do we have a major risk of that stormwater right there, but it happens to be right where our culverts are failing. And if we don't attend to that sooner versus later, we can look at what happened in North Carolina recently with their floods and imagine how that would impact Lyons.
The town limits of Lyons are about 1.46 square miles. Within that small area. The biggest property owner is the town of Lyons. Our parks and open space take up a huge amount of the territory that we can do something about. We need, if we're talking about environmental preservation, we need to carefully preserve and manage the open spaces of property that we own, including fire risk mitigation. That's very important, and we've just set aside and gotten a grant for $80,000 to spend on that this year. We need to protect the space we have. And in terms of how we use that space, a good example of collaboration in local governance is some people who live in the confluence were concerned about the number of events and traffic and things that were going to come into their neighborhood on some of the spaces left over from the flood. At the encouragement of the board, the confluence residents and the town staff and the people who sponsor events on those spaces got together, compromised, came back to the board with a reasonable solution, which we did. That's the kind of thing we need to do, properly manage the spaces that we own.
Love living in this town, and I'm really impressed with what I'm hearing tonight. No matter who gets elected, I think we're gonna be in good shape. I have nothing to add here.
And I have no answers to add. I said earlier that I wouldn't presume to have the answers until I heard lots of people's input on a lot of issues. But I can, I think, point out a few topics that for me illustrate this, and some of them have already been said. If we sort of take the perimeter and then work our way in the downtown, on the perimeter, we have lots of county land. We have not been able to figure out how to work as well as we would like with county parks and open space or with the county generally. I think that's a topic that needs more work. As we move in, we've got the sanctuary puzzle pieces of the buyout properties in the confluence area and elsewhere. I don't think we've really figured out how to protect the natural sanctity of those spaces. We'll keep working on that with the people who are most affected by it, the people who live very close to it. As we get right to downtown, we will have to do some kind of fire mitigation. And we haven't figured out what those really simple things are or how best to help people do them. But things as simple as screening vents, we'll find a way to get there.
And you forgot to tell everyone to read the 256 pages of the wildlife thing, which is due on Saturday.
Thanks, y'all. We're getting down to the last couple questions here. I am gonna go around the horn here with just a one word or one sentence answer. For this next question. So, and for this one, we will start with Mariah. We'll start on this one and we'll go to your right, Mariah. In the business forum last week, the concept of 4 year staggered terms for trustees came up. In one word or one sentence, are you for that or not for that?
Intrigued by that.
Just do it already.
Not that hard. We're happy to serve.
Haven't decided yet.
No, because state law makes it difficult.
I would need more information to make a decision on that.
Yes, because continuity is important.
Yeah, for that, yes.
I think it's better governance to have staggered terms, yes.
Yes, staggered terms for sure, 4-year terms, I think we're all willing to do it, so let's do it.
Yes, staggered 4-year terms.
Great, thank you. And we have one more question. I have a couple of surprise questions coming after this one, but one more question for the whole group here. Amy, you will start us off with this question. So the last whole question, we were just talking about protecting the environment. This question talks about protecting our historic nature of our town as well, as we know, important. How would you manage, as a trustee, the balance between preserving the historic neighborhoods in downtown, balance that with property owner rights and economic vitality?
Very carefully.
Good answer.
I mean, I have a lot to learn here, but you know, we all want a beautiful downtown space and we don't want to have too many restrictions that cost too much money that our business community can't afford to develop.
To our right, so we'll go, Julie, over to you.
Yeah, very carefully is the right answer. I mean, we're on PCDC, this kind of stuff comes up a lot, but you know, we have some really nice design standards for downtown to make things look pretty. And if we can create incentives, I mean, these new plans that are coming in so far are pretty beautiful and they're using the design standards that we developed as a group, really trying to balance that. Again, not putting up so many barriers that we can't get development done, but also really, really respecting. One of the things about this town that's so cool is how old it is. Our house is 120 years old. A little bit tumbled down, but man, it's got some soul and some character. And so that is a vital part of what we need to do as a board to make sure that we balance those things.
I was astounded to hear that, anything 50 years older, 50 years or older are considered historic. That being said, the Historic Preservation Commission is now, they have a grant, and they're going to be cataloging 20 to 22 of the buildings in town that are suspected of having some historic significance. So what that'll do is, should the owner of the building or the potential buyer of the building want to make some exterior changes to it, they would know in advance that it has some historical significance in it, and we can act accordingly.
This isn't a topic I'm particularly well versed on, but I'm excited for the number of people that are up here tonight that are really well versed in it, and I can't wait to learn about it.
I'm on the Historic Preservation Commission, and today I had the pleasure of going on a golf cart tour around town and looking at properties and trying to pick the ones that we're gonna use for the initial grant work. And then we got to meet a lot of people because it was such a nice day and we got to talk to them, and their first response was being threatened by it. No, I don't want to be on that list. And then we explained, hey, you can get other grant money to modernize your bathroom. Would you want that? And they were like, yay, we do. So again, the misinformation is real and big. And I'm sorry I missed the business forum because I heard, my ears were ringing. I heard there were some things about that, you know, no, we don't want to dictate to a property owner, but yes, we do want to preserve. We were up in one district where the Watsons live, where there's these beautiful weird homes from the 70s. They're ancient like us, right? So would they choose to want to do this so that they could modernize something or do something and get some free money? Maybe. We are gonna do a workshop, I think, here in this room in April, so stay tuned for details on that.
I said earlier that I came to Lions largely because of its personality. It has personality and character, and lots of that is instantiated in its buildings. So if there's a way that we can, for those business owners, for those property owners, help them to preserve that character while letting Lions grow and evolve, we will find ways to do that. The Board of Trustees in its current incarnation has been working it. The PCDC in its current incarnation has been working it. People are absolutely committed to doing it in town government. And there are developers, there are business owners who are just as committed to maintaining our character, not having Lions turn into Boulder or into Estes or into Longmont, but finding ways to make sure that Lions stays Lions.
You know, when I was learning to ride a bicycle, I discovered if you go too slow, you fall off. And if you go too fast, you fall off. It's all about maintaining balance, and I think that's what we have to do when it comes to historic preservation. For our purposes here, I can think of nothing more important than historically preserving the three oldest candidates for office here. Greg, Kennedy.
I can't follow this. This is a multi-part question that require long answers, so I'll take the opportunity to pass.
I won't add too much. I agree. I think the survey is a great place to start. Then it comes down to education and communication. Just like 90% of the other projects and issues that we face, it's about talking to people. It's about understanding and alleviating their fears, and then using incentives to get what we want, with mandates being the absolute last thing we should have to approach.
So this is when this sticker comes really handy. What would Laverne do? We all know how Laverne felt about historic structures. We all know how much work she put into preserving our historic character. And, you know, most recently on the Board of Trustees, we've been, you know, revisiting the moratorium on the demolition of historic properties. And we were talking about incentives. Well, basically, we talked about having a stay. So when people come to ask for a building permit, we would say pause. And I feel like we've learned the power of the word pause with the IGA issue these last couple of years. So I really like this idea of just saying pause. Let's take 30 to 45 days, maybe 60 days. Let's educate the property owner. Let's find some incentives. Let's find a way to at least preserve the front, the facade of the building, and maybe we can compromise on the back side. So again, it's compromise, it's educating, it's, you know, incentivizing, all of those tools, right? We just need to use all the tools in our toolbox and never forget, what would Laverne do?
So I think it is a lot of compromise. It's about listening. It's a give and take sometimes. And so I do think it's really important to define the balance between preserving the town spirit with economic development and making sure that those, I don't want to call them restrictions, but whatever the guidelines are for economic development, that they're common sense and that they don't place unnecessary financial strain or impede those businesses from growing and becoming a successful part of the community, and generating sales tax revenue. At the end of the day, we want to preserve the town. We need to ensure that these businesses are generating sales tax revenue, which funds our budget. So I think it's just a balance, but it's common sense approach.
Thank you all. Before we get to closing statements, we can pass the mics just to Paula and Mark, because I have a couple of questions. As we know, that the mayor is fundamentally one vote, just like everyone on the board of trustees is one vote. And the mayor does have some unique duties, written into our code as well. So we have two quick questions for, just Paula and Mark. I did flip a coin before this. Paula, you're gonna answer the first question, and then the second one, we'll start with Mark. Paula, and this, I apologize, this is a multi-part question here, but they're all related, they flow together. Is regional collaboration important? Why or why not? And what would you do to build local, regional, and statewide relationships with other governing bodies or agencies? Minute and a half.
You know, I remember reading a Stanford study that said 85% of why you get a job is your technical skill, but 85% of why you succeed in a job is your relational capacities. I think it's really important to develop relationships at the local level, at the county level, at the state level, at the federal level. I've actually been doing that for the last year. It was my great privilege to be able to give a keynote presentation to 35 of the Front Range mayors last year, and now I've had a chance to spend a good bit of time with them. They know where the money is. Our staff are great at putting together grants, but it's the development of the relationship that's important, particularly with our county commissioners, and then also with our state legislators, then with our federal officials, as well as listening to everybody in town. So to me, it's all about listening and it's all about EQ. And I think everybody up here is pretty bright. That's a marvelous thing. But when the day is done, it's all about the relationships.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the best example of that is our local housing that we've been able to achieve. Lions has achieved its local 10% affordable housing goal. We couldn't have done it without Boulder County. They manage our housing. They do a reasonably good job on it. But to get to that goal, we also had to collaborate at the federal level to get the grant that was essential to add 40 houses there. And we've done it, and we've done some things locally too. But yeah, we have to maintain relationships, particularly in a time when the state is session after session of the legislature chipping away at local control. If we don't maintain good relationships with our local representatives and state senators and work with places like, with institutions like the Colorado Municipal League and the Association of Municipal Utilities to make sure we maintain local control to the extent we can, we'd be out of a job because the state would tell us what we needed to do. So those relationships have been important and will continue to be important.
Thank you all. Mark, this next one will start with you and then go to Paula. As you all know, hopefully everyone up there knows, one of the responsibilities is to run meetings and set agenda for the BOT. What will be your approach to running both civil and effective meetings for the Board of Trustees? Minute and a half.
I would like to change a few things that we've done and kind of gotten into the habit of doing. I would like to communicate earlier to both the trustees, the set of trustees, and to the citizens and to the businesses when things are gonna be on a coming agenda. Yes, we give notice, technically, we give notice at least 24 hours in advance. We try to do it on Thursday afternoons for Monday meetings. I think we can do that earlier. And something I would do kind of internally within the Board of Trustees is, I think it's important to honor the agenda requests that individual trustees can make, to give them fairly rapid attention and a place on the coming agendas. Because if we're gonna get the diversity of viewpoints from 7 different people on the board, each of whom have different connections in town and they have different views, you gotta honor their agenda requests and listen to them. So those are the approaches I would take.
Benchmark.
You know, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. We have had a wonderful 4 years with Holly as mayor when it comes to governance. And I want to continue that same type of governance. Are there tweaks we need to do? Yeah, I think it would be nice if we could get that out earlier than Thursday afternoon. I also know our staff have 1,000 things they have to do, and how many times it tends to change as they update it constantly right up through Monday evening. But I do believe heavily, and it's gonna be on everything you see from me, in civility, in trust. Nobody here in town really has nefarious intent. Let's trust people. Collaboration, we've got to work together as a town, and good governance.
Thank you all. We are at closing statement time, so the first person to go with the closing statement, Julie, and we'll just go down the line to your right. That's quite symmetrical. Before I turn it over to you, Julie, I will have some just final words after our closing statements, once everyone is gone. And for all candidates, in this 1 minute that you have left, consider what is left unsaid that you still want to tell the residents of Lyons. What's a key issue for you? And of course, just your final thoughts. Over to you, Julie.
All right, well, I never actually got to outline my main priorities for town, which I think are the main priorities of everybody up here. Infrastructure, wildfire mitigation, economic vitality. I also believe firmly, as I've already said, that economic vitality is completely entwined with workforce housing and affordable housing. And I think that we need to continue to do those things. I want to give voice to people. I think I've made that very clear. That's a real goal for me, is to make this a collaborative environment for everyone in the town. What has been unsaid? I really don't know. We have said so many wonderful things. I guess the thing I want to say is, like I said earlier, a lot of very competent, very smart, very critical thinkers, people who can make decisions, people who can make things happen. So what differentiates us? Our relationships, our pre-existing relationships at the state and federal level, our relationships with each other, our passion, our ability to connect. I think that's what we need in leadership, and that's what I hope you all are doing.
I have a flyer out there and I put my top 4 goals, but I'll distill it down to just 1 or 2. Number 1, I recognize, and I hope you do too, the uniqueness of this town. And I'm not just talking about the vibe that we have, I'm not talking about the wonderful music and the great places to drink beer and get pizza. I'm talking about the town physically. There's been a lot of talk lately about annexation, expanding the town, getting more housing into town. I don't want to pursue something that is improbable. I don't think there's any place that we can go in Lyons to grow any further. Even if we annex, we're now starting to annex under consideration, annexing difficult properties. We saw that with some of the ones up on the hill here on the north side of town. So again, I'll stress, the uniqueness of Lyons, recognize that, and I want to act in that capacity in that way to recognize it.
A resilient town is one where people can afford to live, businesses can thrive, infrastructure protects daily life, and residents feel invited into civic participation. That's the future that I'm working towards. We need creative financing strategies, stronger communication loops, and more ways to engage all of our voters and entrepreneurs in shaping this town's direction. If we align our investments, blending gray and green infrastructure, economic vitality, and housing stability, governance, and community voice, Lions will continue to be a community ecosystem that truly stands out and can truly stand on its own. I'd be honored to help weave that future with you all.
Yes, I believe that whatever mix of these folks we end up with on the board is gonna be excellent. You might know that we get kicked off of our other boards and commissions if we become board members here. So I would ask that you keep that in mind and also, talk to all your neighbors that are not here tonight about everything we've said tonight. Because I think it's all powerful and all needed. I grew up in Estes. I don't want to be Lions to become the bedroom community or the speed bump on the way to Estes or the ghost town without ghosts. And we really have to manage growth. We do have to do some growing. We have to be creative in our ways of doing that. And so many of you have given us ideas and we need to listen more and definitely find different means of communicating to all of you. There are still so many people. I'm part of the senior group also, by the way, because I am older than I look. And those folks are not online. They're not doing emails and Facebook and whatever. So we need to find other ways to reach out.
Thanks, Jen. Some of us are younger than we look. One thing that's gone unsaid is very specific solutions, and I said at the beginning, I didn't know what those solutions are. I'm glad we've resisted the temptation to say, let's do this and this, this and this. I don't think that's the right answer. I think the answer is seating a board that will be open-minded and will be rigorous in getting to those conclusions. What are my key issues in particular? There are only two things in the world that I could even remotely say that I've had any focus on. One is I spent most of my career in risk management. I was the chief risk officer for a company. I did risk at the national level. I sort of do risk now with the fire department at a much more personal level. I put 3,000 hours in with Lions Fire, and I'm happy to do more. If there are issues about managing risk or about managing fire, I'd like to be at the table to do that. Thoughts? Only 6 or 7 of us will be on the board, but 100 of us should have thoughts. So I've got some flyers out there. They have my email address and phone number. Send us your thoughts and participate.
I really have a lot of appreciation for my opponent. I cannot tell you how many times, probably to the consternation of other members of the board, that in the middle of a meeting, Mark has caused me to change my mind. I appreciate how thoroughly he gets into each one of the issues, and I appreciate how much he loves this town. Now, the truth is, both Mark and I are older than dirt. And so whatever happens, you're just gonna have to hope that neither one of us dies in life. I've done a lot of different things in my life. I'm a therapist. I coach TED speakers. I speak all over the world on issues related to gender equity. Why am I doing this? Because I feel called to do it, to take the wisdom that I have and to do the best in that wisdom, hopefully with humility, to make this the best town we can be.
I first want to thank Paul for cooperating and running the type of campaign that we discussed running before it started, and that's no arguments, no snide comments, none of the kind of politics you see on the national level, at least. And I think we've done that, and so has everybody else here. But thank you, Paula, for cooperating. As to the specifics of details on infrastructure and fire risk mitigation, and everything, I've got a flyer out there and a website. I'd refer you to that. I just simply want to close with a quote from Jacob Fry, who is the mayor of Minneapolis, Minnesota, who's been through a lot lately. And his quote was this: "It is on us as mayors to show that democratically run cities can work. It's on us to take care of the basics and do them very well."
David, first, thank you all for being here and for the people that have an interest in actually serving. I think that's just a good sign of the health of the community. So we'll start with that. We have more tools to work with than most any community our size, with our location, the beauty, the rivers, the parks, the music scene, all of those things. Our biggest challenge is going to be, how do we do everything we want to do versus the things we need to do when we have constrained resources? And that ultimately is what this group is gonna have to try to sort out with the support of the community. And I look forward to any of the group being up there, and I certainly am dedicated to trying to help figure out the right solutions to move us forward.
Thank you, Doug. Well, if you reelect me for a third term, I will have completed a 6-year mandate, which is what I was given in France before I immigrated to the US, about halfway through. So this is payback time. But I'm happy to serve residents of Lyons. I love this community so much that we've decided to stay indefinitely. I promise to listen with my heart. I promise to decide how best to protect and support our community through collaboration. I promise to find creative solutions for funding by working with partners at the regional and state level. I promise to advocate for Lyons always by showing up when asked to join committees. For example, I've been serving on the Boulder County Regional Working Group of elected officials for homelessness for the last year. Or showing up at the Colorado Municipal League's National Conference, end of June. And lastly, I just want to say, go Lyons, the hip little town everybody loves. Thanks for that sticker.
Thank you, thanks. So, I'm running for the Lions Board to use my financial and business experience, working collaboratively as a team member in addressing the infrastructure repairs, capital improvements, to work with local businesses on economic development and identify wildfire mitigation. That's really why I'm running. And just as a side note, Boulder County today has opened up their enrollment for the Wildfire Partners General Rebate Program. So if you haven't signed up for that, I would definitely do that. It's opened up today. I used Bear to remove my junipers and got $500.
Yeah.
Well worth it. So it's just,
All right, everyone, last but not least, you know, this town has given me and my family so very much. And I've spent, the last, going on 20 years, spending a lot of time and energy in helping build community in different ways through new school development or mixed income communities across the Front Range. I've presented to the Metro Mayor's Caucus at the Common Sense Institute about workforce housing, how to bring back that missing middle starter home. And I feel called to bring that knowledge and that experience here to Lyons, pour back into the community that's given me so much. Not that those solutions are gonna be the same solutions here, but there's a lot to learn from my experience, so. Thank you all for sticking it out till 8:30. Thank you all, so much respect to the, have a great week.
There's several final thoughts for me. Yeah, our hope was to end at 8:30, we're at 8:29. Before we close here, we need to be cleared out of this room at 9 o'clock. But candidates would love to hang out and just have more casual conversations just for the next 20 minutes or so, and then we'll have to put this room back together. I said at the top of our night tonight that I wanted to start and end with gratitude. So I just have 2 gratitudes here. One has been expressed so well from all of our candidates. Just so much gratitude to this town and the people in this room, people watching online. I said this at the top, but thanks for showing up and thanks for making this town what it is. And one final roaring round of applause is the final gratitude to all of our candidates and